This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 465 of the Yellow Wall Pods. I'm your host from Wutzko, and today we'll talk about Borussia Dortmund winning 3-1 against VfL Bochum, Gio Reyna going on loan to Nottingham Forrest, also extending his contract while doing that, and of course we will preview tomorrow's game. Yes, we're a little late, I'm sorry, against Heidenheim, and bonus points if we also manage to get Blank going to Salzburg in there. For all that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm fine, how are you?
Very good myself, thank you very much. So, 3-1 against Bochum, Lars. I managed to only watch the first half live and was a little bit disappointed that when I had to start my shift covering the 24 hours of Daytona, that unfortunately it was a draw, and I could not sort of coast into that race knowing that Dortmund had done all their business. But in the end, it was a 3-1 win, and I watched the second half a little bit later, and I must say it was a bit more comfortable. So, Lars, talk me through that game. What were your observations? Were there any drastic improvements compared to the previous two games? What do you think?
I think, first of all, Bochum were the best side they faced so far this season. Not the season, this calendar year, obviously. Given that they'd played against Darmstadt and Cologne, arguably the two worst or least talented, or however you want to call it, sides in the league right now beforehand. So Bochum definitely a step up in terms of the challenge Dortmund were faced with. Then again, it was a home game, and the prospect of being able to take Leipzig after they were beaten by Stuttgart on Saturday. So the table was set, if you like, for a decent home game. I kind of struggle really to put the game into much context. Kind of a hazy memory for me. I mean, I do remember the goals, but beyond that, kind of a nothingness in terms of the game. I don't think that was a particularly memorable 90 minutes or so, despite the two penalties for Dortmund and a strange own goal by Schlotterbeck. It just kind of came and went, this game, I feel like, and at the end they won 3-1. I doubt that in 2 months' time I will remember much about this game outside of Füllkrug scoring a hat-trick.
Yeah, fair. The penalty shots, real quick, Riemann was beside himself throughout and after the game about these calls. The first one, I think, to me was pretty clear. Malen got sort of whacked by him. Obviously, Riemann did have a flesh wound. But still, to me, it was a clear penalty. The second one, I can understand if people are a little bit miffed because the ball clearly did hit Füllkrug's hand in the wind-up to the penalty. But I think the contact on Bino Gittens there was pretty clear. So I think this was always going to stand if it weren't for the handball call, but not quite sure how else to describe it. Last, do you have any other opinions?
I mean, I kind of understand why Riemann would be aggrieved with the first one, just because he has a right to be there. Obviously Malen flicked the ball past him and then kind of stepped on his thighs, but still, I think you could easily make the case that the goalkeeper hindered the attacking player's progress, and that's a foul, even if he came away worse for the wear. The second,
well, it's not like that. Riemann's thigh was right underneath Malen's foot, and he was sort of stepping on him. I think he grazed him more while stepping through Riemann. So to me, it's pretty clear of a foul. I see that Riemann in real time probably felt it differently, but still, I think in the replay, it's pretty clear that this was a penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that, but still, I can understand the argument from the defenders, or in this case, the goalkeeper's perspective. Whereas the second one, I mean, I'm holding my hands up and saying I don't necessarily understand when handball can even be reviewed, because it seemed to me like they made a rule change, as in handball will only get disallowed if it's immediately ahead of scoring the goal. So that was clear.
It felt pretty immediate though.
I mean, it definitely wasn't immediately ahead of the goal, because the goal came from the penalty spot. It's not like Bino Gittens scored after getting the ball from Füllkrug. The point is also that that was an aerial duel where I think the ball didn't come straight onto Füllkrug's upper arm, but came off the defender, or maybe off Füllkrug himself. It was kind of a somewhat chaotic situation. I didn't think necessarily that was a handball situation that was punishable, as it were. So I think that's fair enough to let play go on. And then I agree with you that even if it's slight contact, that's enough. There was a graze of the knee or whatever. Bino Gittens went down. I mean, I suppose we can say that the same thing that we said after the Cologne game, that Sancho probably at least a little lucky to get that call go his way, because otherwise it wouldn't have been overturned. I guess one could make the argument that had they not given a penalty on the pitch for Bino Gittens, that wouldn't have been egregious enough for the referee to be called to the monitor and then give the penalty afterwards. But I think that can be given as a penalty, and ultimately I also don't really think that Bochum were pushing that much for an equalizer that late in the game. I think the third goal came in added time, so I'm struggling to understand how that made all the difference in the game, because as I said, Bochum weren't exactly pushing like mad for an equalizer there.
Yeah, you're right. I think overall, I've been unhappier after performances from Dortmund. I think you can see that they did a little bit better than previously. At least there was a bit more of a flow to the game. Dortmund had far more dominant periods. But as you said, it is a home game. That's usually what you would expect. I mean, it was 63% ball possession, and there were a lot of decent chances. So I think it's out of the question that Dortmund deserved to win this game. And it's obviously interesting to see how they go from this game, because we had Moukoko start for the first time. We had Marlon start, we had Sancho start, and it's already confirmed that the next starting lineup will look different due to injuries, but also we should probably talk about Gio Reyna going to Nottingham Forrest on loan. He did what often happens, he extended his contract for another year, so there is going to be a bit more leverage when he returns from his loan spell from the Premier League. Lars, my opinion, I personally don't think it's a wise decision to let him go at this point, just because I do believe that Dortmund need him currently, especially not knowing how Metscher is going to recover from his hip injury. So I personally would have liked Gio Reyna with a more prominent role, but the player obviously wanted more playing time elsewhere, and made that very clear. And also, in general, it is good for him to go somewhere else and get more playing time. Obviously, it's funny that we will now travel to Heidenheim without Sancho, Brandt, and Royce, and Gio Reyna would have been the perfect guy to have, but that's not how things are. So, Lars, what's your opinion on this loan move? And I think it was notable that Dortmund said that there was no buy option when they announced this loan move.
I mean, I have a number of thoughts. I definitely think it was quite conspicuous that Reyna didn't start against Bochum, given that Brandt and Reus weren't part of the matchday squad. So if not then when, to badly translate a German carnival song. I mean, it didn't make sense to me to play 4-4-2 with I mean, Sancho and Malen are not your 4-4-2 wingers. There were a lot of holes, especially in defensive transitions, where Sabitzer basically was the only one making runs. So I'm not a fan of this setup, which quite obviously we are once again going to get, I suppose, against Heidenheim, just because of lack of options in central midfield, unless they want to play Can, Özcan and Sabitzer in, the 10 spot or whatever. And I think once Reyna came on, he was involved in the second goal with a through ball for Sabitzer's cross to Füllkrug, if memory serves.
Yes.
And generally speaking, I think Dortmund looked more assured in possession and a bit more...
Actually, I think it was Bino Gittens who played the through ball to Sabitzer.
Yeah,
but he was involved
Reyna
before
was
that
involved
somehow.
in one way or the other, if memory serves. And generally speaking, I think Dortmund looked better switching back to a formation that they seem to be more comfortable in, quite obviously, because that's what they've been playing for months, basically in either 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 alignment. And sorry, given that Brandt and Reus are once again missing against Heidenheim, the timing is quite weird for Reyna to go. I think without this move, which was clearly in the works, we've been talking about it for 2 episodes now, he might have started against Bochum, would have started against Heidenheim, and kind of the whole situation would have been quite different. Obviously, timing worked out like this with the transfer window shutting down on Thursday. I think I like the dry loan much better than what was previously reported, a loan with a buyout option for 15 to 20 million, because I think that's, even after all the injuries and lack of playing time, I still think, we talked about this last week, that's below market value. Selling someone not at the peak, but at one of the lowest points just doesn't make sense financially. And I think the hope is obviously that he plays a lot for Forrest, who are in a relegation battle. But from what I read, we're looking to add someone for the wings. So does he have the same issue there that he had at Dortmund, just not getting to play in his preferred position? Or
Well, he's not a winger, so...
Yeah, but what people wrote, The Athletic and whatever, typically sounded to me like Forest were not necessarily looking to add Reyna as the new number 10. So remains to be seen how much he plays there, how much of an incentive is it for them to play him, because obviously they paid a loan fee, which I think was 1 million euros, or reported to be 1 million euros.
Yeah.
They are covering 100% of his salary for the next 5 months, or however long that is, which will come out to, let's say, 2.5 or so million. Obviously that's not nothing in terms of money, but is it enough for a side fighting against relegation to have the incentive to play a player who's not necessarily staying beyond the season? That remains to be seen. So I don't know if a relegation fight in the Premier League is necessarily what I envisioned for Reyna in terms of a lone spot, but that's what he chose. He obviously had a number of alternatives. Maybe he went to England just because, culturally, with his language and all that, and he was actually born in England when his father played there. It's a smoother transition than had he gone, let's say, to Marseille, which was rumored to be interested, or Fiorentina or Sevilla or whatever. That would have been, especially only for a half-year loan, probably a more difficult transition. And yeah, ultimately, I think Dortmund did well extending his contract just to keep all options open. Hope he plays a lot there, comes back with more self-confidence. And My biggest issue, and as we talked about in the last few episodes, with the entire letting Reyna go thing, apart from, it not making the most financial sense to sell someone at a low point, or, the buyout option basically being a sell, is that we don't know that Marco Reus gets a new contract in the summer, and if he doesn't and Reyna hadn't returned from a loan, then that's an issue that you created yourself. So now they have all the options. They can extend Reus, they can put Reyna in their plans more centrally, or get a new guy if both options don't seem particularly worthwhile. But it's just always better to have options, and we don't know yet whether Reyna comes back having played a lot and more self-confidence and as part of Dortmund's plans, or maybe he just goes out there and rehabilitates his market value. I think both are better options than what was previously reported. So ultimately, I'm quite okay with what happened.
Well, I'll be honest. This can go really either way, because, as you said, relegation fight, Gio Reyna, something where you have to show a lot of resiliency. And as Matthias says, he likes to pout. So we'll see where this goes. Obviously, also, I really hope for him that if he gets the playing time that he is hoping to get, that he can also stay injury free, because nothing's going to be worse when he returns to Dortmund from Nottingham Forest with say 230 minutes played, and that's about it. That would be not ideal, to say the least. So I'm really hoping that somehow he managed to thrive there, and obviously it would help for Dortmund's plans if he thrives in the number 8 position rather on the wings, because Dortmund have enough wingers, and him getting re-educated to be a winger doesn't really help matters, to be honest. But I will occasionally tune in when Nottingham Forest play. I think I can have that here in the US on Peacock or whatever. But very interesting. Just one final point on the Bochum game. I thought that Moukoko looked really well when he played. I like that he also took on defenders, showed some nice technical skills here and there, and had one really decent shot saved. I thought overall, for him starting next to Füllkrug, it looked fairly decent. So that to me was positive, and if he starts again against Heidenheim, that was fairly good. You said you will probably not remember this game. I think we might remember it for other reasons than the football, just because I thought that the choreo to honor Marcel Schneider, a fan who sadly passed away after a long battle. I think it was it brain cancer? I think he had a brain tumor. That was obviously really. I don't know. I would say I nearly welled up. Obviously, it was also a lot to take in, since this was a moment of silence not only for Marcel Schneider but also Franz Beckenbauer and also Kai Bernstein, who sadly passed away. The former Hertha president, and it was tough, but certainly a memorable moment, because I don't remember the last time the Südtribüne had a choreo for one fan in particular, and to honor someone like this in that way is certainly a very special thing. So that to me will most certainly stay memorable, but the game itself maybe not so much. So Lars, let's hope that the Heidenheim match will also not be that of a memorable game, because Dortmund just get a dirty win and then move on to the next Friday game, which is against Freiburg the week after. But tomorrow it's going to be not as easy as the previous 3 games, because as you said, Cologne and Darmstadt were absolutely useless. Bochum definitely a bit better, but I would argue that out of the 4 teams of the calendar year, Dortmund's faced Heidenheim arguably the best team. So, what do you expect from Dortmund's lineup going into this side? I think Hummels is back for good after he had this little cameo at the end, and I think Emre Can is also returning, right?
Yeah, Can was already in the matchday squad for Bochum. He's trained now for I don't know how many days in a row, so that should be no issue there. Obviously the big thing is with Brandt, Reus, and Sancho apparently not making the trip. I think the news will probably come out right after we end our recording here, but it seems safe to say that those three guys aren't making the trip. Neither will.
I think it's already confirmed.
Okay. As well as Kobel, I suppose. So
yes, and Kobel. Shit, I forgot.
So it's going to be interesting because. As we talked about earlier, this would have been a perfect opportunity for Reyna, and now it's either going to be the 4-4-2, which, as I said, while I agree that Moukoko and Füllkrug had showed surprising amount of chemistry, I would say, because they don't usually play together unless it's in the final 5 minutes and Dortmund are pushing for a late goal. I think you can see that Füllkrug is quite used to playing in a two-striker formation out of his Bremen days with Marvin Duksch most recently. While that did look good, as I said earlier, I think there were too many holes, especially in defensive transition, and that's something that Dortmund have issues with anyway, and abandoning the center as much as they did. I don't know if that's necessarily something I would look forward to, especially against Heidenheim, who are very strong down the middle. I think I didn't watch the pre-match press conference from Edin Terzic, but I think I saw somewhere that he called Heidenheim the physically strongest team in the Bundesliga. I don't know if that's based on running numbers or height or whatever, but it certainly feels like Heidenheim have a strong...
Heidenheim?
Good lord. It certainly feels like they have a strong spine. They're very good on set pieces, which probably lends itself to the theory that they are quite strong, being able to not be pushed around in the box and all that. So I don't have great feelings about this game. If
that makes us too.
If we want to be positive, we might be positive about ourselves, because if people remember our pre-season episode where we ranked the entirety of the Bundesliga, I think I know I said it. I think you guys, you and Matthias also said that we think Heidenheim will surprise people, because obviously being first-time Bundesliga members, I think a lot of...
Well, you had them in 14th.
Yeah, but
me and my Matthias in 17th.
Okay.
But yeah.
I didn't know that you recorded that for posterity's sake.
I did. I wrote down the whole chart, and I have it here in my Podnotes document.
Yeah.
So every time we reference our masterful preseason predictions, I can just scroll down and take a quick glance at me putting Dortmund in first place and sinking through the floor in shame.
Anyway, I think what we said was that we are, and obviously I'm the least wrong about Heidenheim then. But we were quite complimentary of them, especially head coach Frank Schmidt. I think nobody in German pro football does more with less, because if you look at just the individual quality of their players, they have a couple of good ones, obviously, as most teams do, but I don't think there's a huge gulf between them and fellow promoted side Darmstadt, for example. But if you look at the record in the Bundesliga so far, you would think that Heidenheim have been here for 5 years and Darmstadt are the plucky underdogs, whereas both of them are underdogs, obviously. And I think that's, as I said, credit to Frank Schmidt. And if we wanted to look at the most dangerous opponents' players, I think former Dortmund man Jan-Niklas Beste, probably the best left foot for set pieces in the entire Bundesliga this season, and Eren Dingchi, a Werder Bremen loanee, who is very much surprising me this season, because I never saw much at Bremen from him, and he's now playing at a level where conceivably Turkey and Germany are thinking about whether or not they need to take him to a national team meetup ahead of the Euros, just to make sure that he doesn't go to the other team. But I do think he actually declared, as it were, for Turkey already. But he's been one of the shooting stars in the Bundesliga this season, maybe outside a bit of the huge public focus. But his pace at almost 2 meters height definitely causing teams quite a few problems, and I think it was last week where he scored an absolute wonder goal with a long solo, using his pace again. So, if usually, Stefan, you ask me, especially with those teams that overseas listeners probably aren't that familiar with, who the danger men are, and certainly Beste and Dingchi are the ones most to look out for.
Yeah, don't discount the good old Tim Kleindienst. He's a sneaky one, I feel. So yeah, he's also up there with 6 goals. Dingchi has scored 7 so far, and as you said, Jan-Niklas Beste is their third best scorer with 5 goals, 7 assists. So that makes him the overall top scorer if you count goals and assists with 12. So yeah, they are a dangerous team, as Dortmund have noted in in the reverse fixture. And I personally am not really much looking forward to a Friday night game in Heidenheim in early February. It just does not give me great confidence. But what I will say is I still look forward to it, because right now I'm looking forward to every minute Ian Maatsen is playing football, because it is just so refreshing to see him play, maybe also in contrast to other left backs that we have had. But more importantly, I think it will also be a start for Jamie Bino-Gittens probably, and of course Daniel Malen and Mokoko. So there will be a lot of youth in play, and a lot of skill players on the pitch. So maybe if Dortmund struggle to break down Heidenheim, in one way, maybe individual skill will save the day once again, little bit like it did in Darmstadt. We'll see about that, but at least lineup wise, despite the many injuries, I mean, we're down Reus, we're down Brandt, we're down Adeyemi, and Reyna now too. Basically, it's and Duranville you can also count there, because he's also not playing.
And Alea.
And Alea, yes. But still, I think there's still a lot of offensive firepower. So at least from that standpoint, I hope that Dortmund somehow managed to surprise me and make this a half decent game. I don't expect a great margin of victory, but yeah, if Dortmund managed to somehow eke out another win there, that would be very positive. I mean, it is obviously helped that Dortmund now, I think, did they jump to 4th place over Leipzig during the last match day? To solidify that a little bit, and if we make the Watzkian argument and compare the market values between those two teams, I still think Dortmund should have very much the upper hand. But yeah, this is obviously not how football works. And Heidenheim, although they've drawn their last 3 games against Cologne, Wolfsburg, and Hoffenheim, all 1-1 apiece, I still think are a very dangerous team. So I'm cautiously looking forward to the game for reasons just mentioned. And yeah, Lars, do you have any final thoughts on tomorrow's game?
I mean, maybe we ought to at least mention how strange the first meeting was. I mean, I that was just a weird game of football, I think, because
I've never watched the second half, because similarly to the last game, I had to work in this when the second half started, so I only watched the first half, and I went downstairs to my office, and I was like, this is all rolling. They'll probably like add 2 more or 3 more in the second half, and that's that. But didn't turn quite out that way, did it?
No, it didn't. And I mean, it's one thing to drop a 2-goal lead. I mean, was early in the season, that stuff can happen, but the way both teams basically abandoned midfield and defense late in the game, and it was just one long ball and a scoring opportunity after the other, and Heidenheim actually having arguably more of a reason to be annoyed with a draw away at Dortmund when they won their first point ever in the Bundesliga, if I'm not mistaken. Such a weird game of football. Dortmund, I'm not sure how many better first halves they've played after this game, and then obviously was on match day 3 early in the season. those first 45 minutes, that was very good. And then, after the halftime break, something just clicked for Heidenheim, or I don't know what the reverse of clicking is, but happened to Dortmund.
Unclicked.
I mean, a night and day difference. So it's just a bizarre game of football. And I suppose if we want to take that into account for the game on Friday evening in Germany,
let's concede early and then come back.
Either that, or be aware that Heidenheim aren't pushovers. And I mean, obviously, they spent most of the season completely out of any sort of danger. I think their points record is already almost, and I mean, obviously they still have to score some points, but they are far away enough from relegation zones for them not to have to worry particularly, I think. I mean, unless they drop like 7 games in a row, but quite frankly, there's no reason to assume that because they've been competitive.
I mean, they're unbeaten in 5 games. Yeah. They have 2 wins, 3 draws right now.
And I don't remember them ever being completely battered. I don't remember how they played at Bayern. I think they might have been competitive in the first half, and then in the second half game it went away from them a little bit. If that's not the Darmstadt script, and I'm getting things mixed up, but even if...
I think the Darmstadt script was that they started really well, but then had another sending off or so.
Yeah.
I think Darmstadt, when they played Bayern, the first 20 minutes, Darmstadt was legit the better team against Munich, because I happened to watch that game, but somewhere midway through the first half already, it sort of collapsed for them because they had a sending off, and then the momentum swung back to Bayern, and they got clobbered in the end. But yeah, I did not watch Heidenheim v Bayern, so I don't know.
I mean, they lost in Munich 2-4 goals, and if I'm just looking it up now, they were down 2 and then apparently made it 2-2. So maybe that's a specialty of Heidenheim. So yeah, just to say, they've been competitive throughout the season. They are better than you would think from a first-time promoted side, and obviously the first meeting should help Dortmund in, sharpening the senses or whatever.
Yeah. That being said, analytics say their expected goal difference is minus 17.3, which makes them the 3rd worst in the league, ahead of Cologne and Darmstadt by quite a margin, because Bochum is at minus 9.8, and the expected goal difference per 90 for Heidenheim is minus 9.1.
That cannot be right.
0.91. Sorry. No, they're not expected to concede 9 goals per game. That would be very funny, though. So at least these stats make of that what you will, tell the story that they might have overperformed a little bit. All right, it is just time to end the show, Lars, because I have lost the ability to speak, which is sort of something you kind of need to record a podcast. So, Lars, I'm just going to quit talking, and you will just briefly tell our listeners that Henry Blank is gone and why that is good or bad for Dortmund, and so on, and then we'll just end it.
I'm not actually sure as of right now. It's been made official, but apparently, and enough sources talking about it, Henry Blank, who debuted against Cologne when Süle had to come off with back issues, if I'm correct, is off to Red Bull Salzburg for a transfer fee that can amount to 7 million euros, which is quite a bit of money considering he's never been, rated as an absolute super talent or whatever. And obviously he's only played 45 minutes of first team football. He's played quite a bit for the second team in the 3rd division. And his development was surprisingly good. As I said, he never was considered, an absolute crown jewel of Dortmund's talent department or whatever. So the issue, I think, is that his contract runs until 2025, and Dortmund wanted to extend, but he probably didn't feel like he was going to get enough playing time to develop further in the first team over the next few months, and he's kind of caught between, being quite obviously too good over distance in terms of playing for the Dortmund second team, but probably not good enough to play for the first team, even if Mats Hummels were to retire in the summer. So kind of caught between those, between a rock and a hard place, as it were. And then going to Salzburg, where you can definitely play European football every season, where young players are getting developed and can leave for greener pastures after a season or 2 seasons or whatever. So I can understand that. I think it's quite annoying actually that a lot of Dortmund's talents, because the same is happening to Julian Reikhoff, who is going back to Ajax. There seems to be a lack of patience sometimes, which is kind of annoying. And obviously that kind of stuff makes the club look bad sometimes, because those are talents that you want to develop. And then when that doesn't happen and you sell them, it seems like you are not, focusing enough on youth and development. But what's the alternative? If the player doesn't want to extend his contract that is running for 17 more months, it makes economic sense to sell that guy for a somewhat sizable transfer fee, which, 7 million euros, that's nothing to scoff at. That gets you apparently a half season of Jadon Sancho, and probably you have something to spare there. So it's not like that's nothing even for a club with the turnover of Dortmund. So at the end of the day, I think what we always say when players leave is, Reisende soll man nicht aufhalten. It's in German, so people, I'll be amazed if I get this correctly in any way.
I can't wait.
Don't hold up travelers, I suppose. I mean, if someone wants to leave, basically you just sort of...
Travelers should not be obstructed.
Yeah, that even sounded German. Perfect. I think when players want to leave and really want to leave, so as it seems was the case with Reyna, I think it's, even if you're annoyed by it, it's always best. And ultimately, I'm quite surprised we managed to talk 5 minutes about Henry Blank, and that's sort of I mean, you made the impression of a World War II prison guard, so that's something.
All right. Anyway, I hope Henry Blank has a lot of fun in Salzburg. That's a beautiful city. I've been there. I also hope he does not develop to the extent that he then becomes a very good player for RB Leipzig down the Red Bull pipeline. That would be very much not appreciated. Anyhow, Lars, thank you very much for your German School of Idioms. And we shall be back with another podcast sometime between the Heidenheim and the Freiburg game. Until then, goodbye.